81. The Ploughman and the Snake Who Had Killed His Son. A snake slid up to the child of a ploughman and killed it. The ploughman, demented with grief, took an axe and went to keep watch near the snake's hole. He was ready to strike it at the moment it came out. The snake poked his head out, and the labourer hurled his axe but missed, and instead split a nearby rock in two. Having missed, he was in great fear that the snake would take his revenge on this attack by striking him with his fangs, so he attempted to appease it. But the snake replied, "Neither of us can pretend to any good feelings, neither I when I see the gouge you have made in the rock, nor you when you look at the tomb of your child." This fable shows that great hatred does not lend itself to reconciliation. 82. The Ploughman and the Frozen Snake. One winter, a ploughman found a snake stiff with cold. He took pity on it, picked it up, and put it under his shirt. When the snake had warmed up against the man's chest, it reverted to its nature, struck out, and killed its benefactor. When he realized that he was dying, the man bemoaned, "I well deserve it for taking pity on a wicked wretch." This fable shows that perversity of nature does not change under the influence of kindness. 83. The Farmer and His Children. A farmer who was on his deathbed wanted his children to acquire some experience of farming. He summoned them to him and said, "My children, I am not long for this world, but as for you, look for what I have hidden in my vineyard, and you will find all." The children, imagining that their father had buried a treasure in some corner of his vineyard, hoed deeply all of the ground in it as soon as their father had died. They found no treasure, but the vineyard, so well tended, gave its fruit many times over. This fable shows that for men, work is the real treasure. 84. The Ploughman and Chance. A ploughman, while hoeing, chanced upon a hoard of gold in his field. So every day he crowned the image of Mother Earth with a garland, convinced that it was to her he owed this favor. But the goddess of chance, Tyche, appeared to him and said, "Why, my friend, do you attribute to the earth all the gifts I have made to you with the intention of making you rich? If times change and the gold passes to other hands, I am certain that it is me, Chance, who you will blame then." This fable shows that you must recognize the one who helps you and return the favor. 85. The Ploughman and the Tree. Once there was a tree in the field of a ploughman which bore no fruit, and which served only as a roost for sparrows and humming cicadas. Seeing its sterility, the ploughman went to cut it down with his axe and struck the initial blow. The cicadas and sparrows pleaded with him not to cut down their sanctuary, but to leave it for them so that they might chirp there and charm him with their music. Without paying any attention to them, he began hacking at the tree with his axe, giving a second and a third blow. But, having cut into the hollow of the tree, he found a swarm of bees and some honey. He tasted the honey and threw down his axe. From that moment on, he honored the tree as if it were sacred, and he took great care of it. This proves that, by nature, men have less love and respect for justice than a desperate eagerness for gain. 86. The Ploughman's Quarrelsome Sons. A ploughman's sons were always quarrelling. He scolded them to no avail. His words did nothing to change their ways. So he decided to teach them a practical lesson. He asked them to bring him a load of firewood. As soon as they had done this, he gave a bundle to each and told them to break it all up for him. But in spite of all their efforts, they were unable to do so. The ploughman therefore undid the bundles and handed each of his sons a stick at a time. These they broke without any trouble. "So," said the father, "you too, my children, if you stay bound together, can be invincible to your enemies. But if you are divided, you will be easy to defeat." This fable shows that as long as harmony is maintained, discord is easy to overcome. 87. The Old Woman and the Doctor. An old woman whose eyes were failing summoned a doctor for a certain fee. He went to her house and, each time, he treated her eyes with unguent. On each occasion, while her eyes were thus shut, he stole her furniture piece by piece. When he had removed everything, the eye treatment came to an end and he demanded his agreed fee. The old woman refused to pay him, so he took her before the judge. She then declared that she had indeed promised him a fee if he restored her sight, but since the doctor's course of treatment her condition was worse than before. "For," she said, "previously I could see all the furniture at home, but now I can't see any of it." Thus it is that dishonest people, thinking only of their greed, furnish evidence of their own guilt. 88. The Wife and Her Drunken Husband. There was a woman whose husband was a drunkard. To get the better of him and his vice, she devised a plan. She waited for the moment when her husband was so drunk that he was like a corpse. Then she heaved him up over her shoulders, carried him to the cemetery, and dumped him there. When she thought he had slept it off, she went back to the cemetery and knocked on the door of the vault. "Who's that at the door?" the drunkard called out. "It's me who comes to bring food for the dead," replied his wife mournfully. "Don't bring me anything to eat, my good man. Bring me more to drink. You distress me by talking about food and not drink." The wife, beating her breast, cried out, "Alas, how miserable I am! My plan has had no effect on you, husband. For not only are you not sober, but you have become even worse. Your weakness has now become second nature to you." This fable shows that you shouldn't become habituated to a loose way of living, for there comes a time when habit forces itself upon you, whether you like it or not. 89. The Woman and Her Servants. A hard-working widow had several young servant girls whom she woke every day at cock's crow to set them to work. These servant girls, continually worn out from exhaustion, decided to kill the household's cockerel. For, in their eyes, it was he who caused their misery by waking their mistress before dawn. But, when they had carried out their design, they found that they had only increased their misery. For the mistress, to whom the cock no longer told the hour, made them get up even earlier in the dark to start work. This fable shows that, for many people, it is their own devices that are the cause of their misery. 90. The Woman and the Hen. A widow had a hen which laid an egg every day. She imagined that if she gave the hen more barley, it would lay twice a day. So she increased the hen's ration accordingly. But the hen became fat and wasn't even capable of laying one egg a day. This fable shows that if, through greed, you look for more than you have, you lose even that which you do possess. 91. The Sorceress. A sorceress made a profession of supplying charms and spells for the appeasing of the anger of the gods. She was assiduous in her business and thus made a very comfortable living. But, envious of her success, someone accused her of making innovations in religion and prosecuted her for it in court. Her accusers succeeded and had her condemned to death. As she was led away from the court, someone shouted to her, "Hey, woman, you made such a profit from diverting the wrath of the gods. Why can't you divert the wrath of the people?" This fable applies as well to a wandering seeress who promises wonders but shows herself incapable of ordinary things. 92. The Heifer and the Ox. Seeing an ox at work in the fields, a heifer expressed sympathy to him about his punishment. But at that moment a solemn religious procession passed by, the ox was unyoked, and someone seized hold of the heifer and prepared to slaughter her as a religious sacrifice. At the sight of this, the ox smiled and said, "O heifer, this is why you have had no work to do, for you were intended to be sacrificed." This fable shows that danger lies in wait for the idle. 93. The Cowardly Hunter and the Woodcutter. A hunter was looking for the tracks of a lion. He asked a woodcutter if he had seen the footprints of a lion and where the lair of the beast was. "I will show you the lion himself," said the woodcutter. The hunter became deathly pale with fear and, his teeth chattering, said, "It's only the trail I'm looking for, not the actual lion." Some people tend to be bold in words and cowardly in deeds. 94. The Young Pig and the Sheep. A young pig mingled with a flock of sheep and was grazing with them. One day the shepherd grabbed him and he began to kick and squeal. The sheep reprimanded him for squealing and said to the pig, "We get caught by him constantly and we don't make such a fuss." The pig replied, "But when he gets hold of us, you and me, it's for different reasons. With you, he wants your wool and your milk. With me, it's my flesh he's after." This fable shows that people who moan are justified in making a fuss if they are at risk of losing their lives rather than their money. 95. The Dolphins, the Whales, and the Gudgeon. Some dolphins and some whales were engaged in battle. As the fight went on and became desperate, a gudgeon poked his head above the surface of the water and tried to reconcile them. But one of the dolphins retorted, "It is less humiliating for us to fight to the death between ourselves than to have you for a mediator." Similarly, certain nobodies think that they are somebody when they interfere in a public row. 96. The Orator Demades. The orator Demades spoke one day to the people of Athens. As no one was taking much notice of what he was saying, someone asked if he could tell one of Aesop's fables. Agreeing to the request, he commenced thus. The goddess Demeter, the swallow, and the eel all took the same route. They arrived at the edge of a river. Then the swallow flew up into the air and the eel dived into the water. At that point he stopped speaking. "And Demeter?" someone asked. "What did she do?" "She got angry with you," he replied, "who are neglecting the affairs of the state to listen to the fables of Aesop." Thus men are unreasonable who neglect important things in preference to things which give them pleasure. 97. Diogenes and the Bald Man. Diogenes, the cynic philosopher, was once insulted by a man who was bald. He replied, "You have no right to insult me. God knows. On the contrary, I commend the good sense of the hairs which have left your wretched skull." 98. Diogenes on a journey. Diogenes took a journey once and came to a stop when he reached the steep bank of a deeply flowing river where his progress was obstructed. A local man who was used to crossing the water at that place saw that Diogenes was perplexed. So he went up to him, lifted him onto his shoulders, and obligingly carried him to the other side. Once they had reached the other side, Diogenes began reproaching himself for his poverty, which prevented him from showing his gratitude for this favor from his benefactor. While he was preoccupied with this dilemma, the local man saw another traveler who could not cross, ran up to him, and began to carry him over as well. Diogenes reproached him and said, "I am not grateful for what you did for me, for I see it is not an act of judgment on your part, but a manic compulsion which makes you do what you do." This fable shows that if you oblige insignificant people as well as people of merit, you expose yourself to being thought a man of no discernment. 99. The oak trees and Zeus. The oak trees complained to Zeus, "We have lived our lives for nothing, grown up simply in order to be cut down. For, more than all the other trees, we are exposed to the brutal blows of the axe." Zeus replied to them, "You are yourselves to blame, for if you did not produce the handle of the axe, if you were not so useful to carpenters and in agriculture, the axe would never fell you." Certain people who are the authors of their own ills foolishly cast the blame onto the gods. 100. The woodcutters and the pine tree. Some woodcutters were splitting a pine tree, and, thanks to the wedges that they had made of its wood, they split it easily. And the pine tree said, "I dread less the axe that cuts me than the wedges which came from me." It is easier to endure the blows from strangers than it is from those nearest to you.